You know what time it is.
Time to stand up and speak your mind. In this elitist jungle, keep the beats alive. Whether yoga or doja that keeps you high. Gotta stay up, cause on the street you die. Time to wake up and see the light. Stop counting sheep, seize your life. Free your eyes and see suns rise on the horizon. Where the street meets the sky. Master's ignorance feeds our master's greed. Open your mind and read some chapters, please. Fuel the forge. Man, those are some good lyrics. I wonder who did that. Again. All right, what's up, guys and gals and peeps and sheeps, all alike? What do we got going on today? Coming in at ya on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm silly. I'll be getting silly. All right, let's take a look at these cards. I got some info I wrote down here. Ooh, using the gifts God gave us. Hold on. I got some other cards over here. I got all my podcast cards right here. Cue cards. I should just have these up. Ooh. Hanging on to something ugly because at least you know what you have. That's a good one. We talked about that. We kind of talked about that. Yeah, we talked about those. I got some other notes. But they're in my phone, and the phone is being used to record the pod. I got one fresh on my mind, though, and I got one fresh, and it kind of follows up with what I've been talking about recently, and touches base on one of these other podcasts, and it's an idea that I have in my head that I'm familiar with, that I've explored for quite some time. And it's this idea of the observer is what I call it. It's fresh in my head because I've been listening to a book about mindfulness, about being mindful, which is kind of like meditation practices and helping you to focus your attention. It's a really good book. When I finish, I'll talk about that a little bit, but the author, she calls it the bird's eye view, which I liked as well. The observer, the bird's eye view. And basically what it is, detach. I called it detach in one of my previous podcasts as well. And basically it's this idea of sort of removing yourself from the emotions that you're having in a particular moment. Again, I've mentioned it as doing third person in your journal. So if you're journaling about something, tell the story as if you were watching yourself, as if you were somebody else watching yourself. So I would write down in my journal, Berg went to the coffee shop. Berg was feeling excited. Berg liked the smells. Berg saw the cute girl. Berg, those kinds of things. And that helps you to sort of, again, it helps you detach, and it helps you to sort of assess yourself kind of in a more objective manner. Because when you're in the emotion and you're feeling the emotion, the reaction that you're going to have to the world is going to be based on that emotion, and you will project that out. So if you're angry and you're pissed off, right, your reactions are going to be fucking angry and pissed and frustrated and or sad and crying. But if you can sort of detach, right, and go, okay, hold on, now this takes practice, right? This takes a lot of practice. You have to practice it, right? It's good to practice this when you're not, like, practice this in smaller doses, practice this in easier moments, right? When you're not dysregulated and you're not hyper vigilant and you're not, fucking going off the rails, practicing it in smaller moments, practicing it in your journal, right, can help you to focus your attention to what that feels like to detach. And then when moments build, perhaps you'll begin to notice yourself building, right? I mean, all of these things take practice. All this stuff, journaling takes practice. That's why I like to journal every day. Even if it's a minimal amount of journaling, it's a practice, right? It helps you to become aware. So the more you practice this idea of detaching, right? Let's practice right now. You breathe. My nose has been clogged lately. This dry weather. Let's breathe. We'll take a couple of deep breaths here. Okay, and I'll detach a little bit. Bird's eye view, right? I'm looking down. There's Berg. He's sitting in the chair in front of his computer. He's got a light on, illuminating his face, right? He's got his camera on him, microphone in front of him. Looks to be like he's recording something. Perhaps it's the greatest podcast the world will ever know. He's laughing. He must be smiling at something. Maybe there's some humor involved. He's talking, and his voice seems calm, and he seems collected, and he seems cool, and he's engaged with the camera, and he's engaged with the computer, and he's engaged with his mud. The Berg picks up a cup. It's a gray cup. Looks like it could be a Yeti cup. Bougie-ass Yeti cup. This is punk-ass bouginess. And seems like maybe he's talking a little bit of crap to himself. Sounds like he's talking some shit and perhaps trying to emulate some humor as he goes along. It's a gray cup. It seems like maybe there's some sort of brownish, tannish liquid inside the cup, maybe coffee. He sips and he makes noise as he sips. He's a person that likes to noisily sip. That could be annoying to some folks. He's messing with the computer, perhaps making tweaks on the audio. Looks like it's an audio program. So here, he's coming back. I'm coming back. Now I'm back to I, right? It seems silly. I get it. It seems kind of silly. But in a way, this is a good practice to do, right? In the mindfulness book, she talks about this, and I've heard this before, in meditation. It helps if you detach from yourself and look at yourself from a third person, from a bird's eye view, right? Practice doing that. If you're going into a meditation, tell the story of what, close your eyes and imagine that you would know you're sitting in the chair, and just imagine yourself, picturing yourself, there's the Berg sitting in the chair, taking deep breaths in a meditative state, calm and breathing, focused on his breath. His legs are crossed at the ankles, right? His arms are resting in the armrests of the chair. So again, there we go, right? Practicing third person. Practicing, I call it the observer. That's what I like to call it, the observer, the bird's eye view, right? And this is a really good practice. And one of the things that is really helpful with this is the more you practice this and the more you become aware of this in situations where you might start to become, right, agitated, or maybe you're going to get reactive to something that's going on, then perhaps you might be able to detach a little bit, go into the bird's eye view, and then you can reassess the situation. Another term she used in this book was reappraisal, and I like that. She used it in this idea. The idea that she was talking about was a lot of times we have these huge reactions, these big reactions to these little events that pop up in our life, and so for example, and I'll use the example she used in the book. She said, if somebody lost their job and they're crying over it, that would be an appropriate reaction. But if somebody spilled their coffee and then they're crying over it, that might not be quite an appropriate reaction. Now, lots of things go on throughout. I mean, the coffee could not be the thing that the person's crying about, but you can see where we're going, and being able to sort of detach in these smaller moments and then reappraise can help you get to a reappraisal. So again, I like to do the observer. I was talking about the observer the other day because I was having a strong emotion to a song. Now, I wouldn't say that it was an overreactive emotion. At the time that I was going through the situation that I was talking about, listening to the Kings of Leon song, that's what's in my head right now. I'm thinking about the podcast going back where I was listening to the Kings of Leon song, and I had this moment where I separated from myself. I detached, bird's eye, observed myself, looked back in on myself, and found freedom to feel those feelings and felt gratitude for feeling really sad. I was processing a broken heart. It was fresh and new at the time. And that song had hit me. It was probably the first time I had heard that song after this breakup, right after the breakup, and it hit me. And that song is, again, I'll share that song with you. It's called "Walls" by Kings of Leon. Give that song give it a listen, and it may have an effect on you as well. Interesting side note, I just heard, and I haven't looked this up yet, but I heard that, so I'm a person who gets goosebumps when I hear good music. I mean, it hits me all over. And I heard something like only 50% of people react to music that way. I don't know if that's true. If you know or have any information on that, get in those comments, let me know. But that's something that I heard, and I thought, well, that might be interesting because I have met some people who didn't seem to have reactions like that. Or when saw me get goosebumps, they kind of looked at me funny, like as if maybe they didn't understand that. And that would make sense if they don't, and jokingly, I like that they're just fucking soulless motherfuckers, apparently. Jeez, that's harsh. Jesus, Berg. See, am I reappraise that language? Detach, as the Berg goes hard on some individuals. No, but I thought that, God, what are you, soulless? You don't have a soul? Like, man, that stuff, some of that music, man, hits me. But perhaps people just have different reactions to different things, and they're human, Anyway, yeah, 50%. Side note. But yeah, the observer and that kind of thing, detach, and it helps to get in the journal and do that. And so the term the observer I heard first was in a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? If you haven't heard of it, it's an interesting movie. It's called What the Bleep Do We Know? And basically, it's a bunch of hippie types, new wavy, new agey types, and some scientists and some other things. And basically, they're exploring this idea of quantum physics in relation to consciousness and how that may affect us. And there are some interesting concepts that they have in that movie. It's a fun movie. I would take it with a grain of salt. But it's a fun movie, and there are some interesting ideas and some interesting concepts that I've taken with me and I've explored, and some of the stuff makes sense when you think about it. If you think about it, it can make sense. And again, it's all cool. And for me, having the curiosity that I have about the workings of the world, I like to get bits and pieces from all kinds of sources and then pull those bits and pieces in and see how they fit in my understanding and how I think and how I move, and again, taking these bits and pieces from everywhere. I mean, again, God will provide you with information as long as you're open, and what I'll do is I'll take that information back to God, take it back to my knees, take it back and ask him to help reveal more to me and provide clarity, through his words and through his, through what he reveals. So, again, I always go back to God, but again, it's all a puzzle. This whole thing is this big puzzle, and we're putting the pieces together. For me, it is like a big puzzle, and I'm putting the pieces together. Ooh, this is cool, and ooh, check this out, and ooh, that's kind of the devil. Which, peace out, homie. And again, I always take it back to God. That might not be your style or your thing, and that's okay. We're talking about healing ourselves. Really, this podcast is about healing and growth and finding your growth so that you can be a better person for you, right? And for the world. And so however you got to get there is how you got to get there, being less of an asshole out there in the world is a good idea. And so, the observer. I've practiced this in my journal. This again, sometimes these podcasts, I just get a wild hair and I sit down. Hey, let me jump in here. This is one of those moments where I didn't do a lot of prep for this one. I just sat down, and I think that's okay too for us. It's good to know, hey, not every one of these things is planned out. I do have some notes that I write down. The observer is in my notes on my phone. As I go through my day, I kind of pop open my phone and go, oh, the observer. And today I heard that lady say, in that book, Bird's Eye View, and I added it to the observer note in my phone. And I thought, let's talk about the observer. That's a cool little topic. And again, it always going to come back to the journal, right? Always bring it back to the journal. So your homework would be to practice in your journal telling a third person story, right? Tell the story of your day as if you were the observer, right? The narrator. That's another good one, right? The narrator, right? You're telling your story to somebody else, or you're telling the story of who you are from another position, and see how that goes. See how that feels, man. And then find some emotions that you're feeling. I'm thinking in my head to see what kind of emotions I go through. We all go through a plethora of emotions throughout our day. Right, from moment to moment, they come and they go, and they come in waves, and from moment to moment, you can go from frustrated to stoked, in a moment. Sometimes, these practicing, the bird's eye view can help you to maintain those as these smoother waves, right? So you'll notice if things start to spike up, let me catch that and bring it back down. Right? Or paying attention. Paying attention is a good thing. And that's what this mindfulness book is about paying attention and helping you to focus your attention. Because 100% of our attention is being used at all times. It's just where is it focused, and that can change, and there's only a certain amount of memory, if you will, just like your computer has memory. Our brain has a certain amount of memory that it uses to focus the attention. And practicing focusing is important. And one of those techniques is the observer. But I kind of wanted to just bring it up and talk about it a little more, because I kind of talked about it a little bit in one of the other podcasts. So I kind of wanted to dive into it a little bit more and see if I could, clarify even for me this idea, and bring it into your journal. I think is really important. And if you're not meditating, that's a good practice to do. Again, let me finish this mindfulness book. Because it's really good, and I will definitely, I need to work on my meditation daily and my daily practices of mindfulness practice. It's something that I need to add into my routine. And over the last couple of years, and this last year especially, I've worked on adding that, but again, we fall out, and sometimes, but it's one of those things that should be a priority. It should be priority. Like getting up early for me is priority, going to the gym is priority, and then mindfulness should happen, right? So it would be like, let's say, early, gym, journal, mindfulness, right? That would be a good routine for me to do every morning. And according to this book, 12 minutes, I believe 12 minutes is the magic number. 12 minutes of meditation, mindfulness practice, 5 days a week. That's not a lot of time. If you think about it, it's not a lot of time. 12 minutes. We can find 12 minutes. I can add 12 minutes to my routine, I could definitely add 12 minutes to come home and write in my journal, and then, get on. So let's see. Actually, it's in the morning, hit the gym, come home, pray, journal, mindfulness, world's greatest podcast, and, and these are my routines in the morning, and I've been working on spending a little bit of time on my podcast every day as well, right? If I'm not recording a podcast, then I'm doing some things to, editing the video and the audio, or checking out my stats, seeing how things are going, just something involved with my podcasting and my other business and those things. Working on doing something a little bit every single day is important to me, and those are my priorities. So I can add 12 minutes in there, I think, most days. Some days I got to crunch because I have other things to do, like pick up the kiddo. And those days I have to crunch for work. So usually on those days, the gym's a little bit shorter, the journal's a little bit shorter, just because I got to get out there and press for work. So, but still 5 days a week, if you pick 3 weekdays and 2 of those Saturday, Sunday, find some time, you got 12 minutes. I know I can find 12 minutes of mindfulness. Speaking of meditations, while we're on a meditation, a really good meditation that I found is this surrender meditation by a guy named Jason Stevenson. And I've found it on iTunes. So that's Jason Stevenson, and it's a surrender meditation. It's a guided meditation. It's about 30 minutes, and I find that one really interesting. Jason Stevenson is an Australian, or I believe he's Australian, so he's got this really cool accent and this really calm voice, and he kind of walks you through this meditation. And I've found that surrender one to be really helpful. Like, I like to do it like at bedtime. If I feel like I've had a rough day and I need to just sort of let go and surrender, let go and let God. I find that, I pop that on as I lay down in bed, and just let Jason Stevenson talk me down. And I find that one really helpful as well. That's a fun one. And that Jason Stevenson, he's got a lot of other, he's got some chakra healing stuff and some other stuff. But the surrender one I really like. That's a really good one. Yeah, and his voice, that Australian accent's a lot of fun. I find it soothing. I find it soothing. I've attempted to do some other some other meditations, but I find that one interesting. Interestingly enough, it was my baby mama who introduced me to that particular meditation, and it stuck with me. And we talk about those things, like we talk about those waves, and sometimes things we attach to some of those relationships that were hurtful, and over time, they become your own thing, right? And so the pain part of it kind of goes away, and that's one of those things where Jason Stevenson has sort of become my own. Another thing I realized recently, reconnecting with somebody, I reconnected with my ex-wife, who we had a really toxic relationship years ago. And a couple of years ago, we kind of reconnected and we had some forgiveness. It was really awesome to be able to, and we've sort of become friends a little bit over the last couple of years. And one of the things her and I talked about was she introduced me to Jack Johnson, who I didn't know about. And for the longest time, whenever I would hear Jack Johnson, it would sort of be hurtful for me. Like it would be, it would kind of bring up this, and that took probably a couple of years, a good solid year before that began to kind of die down a little bit. Now when I listen to Jack Johnson, it's become mine. I love Jack Johnson, but it does always remind me of her and that relationship. And again, it's a wave, right? But those waves of pain, that hurt part of it kind of dies down. And then I just sort of remember that as a pleasant part. Like, whoa, that was one of the gifts from that relationship. There were many gifts. And that's another thing too. When you find the gratitude for the suffering, right? I realize, Jack Johnson reminds me, hey, that was a really difficult relationship, and I made it through that relationship, and I'm a stronger person. That relationship built my character, built my strength, helped me learn about myself. And so therefore, Jack Johnson actually gives me a feeling of gratitude and gives me a feeling of, hey, I'm really grateful for that relationship. I'm grateful for the hurt that it caused, because without that hurt, I wouldn't have grown into the man and the human that I've become today. Again, there's that perspective thing, right? Finding gratitude for the pain and actually having the freedom to look at that. That's freedom. Again, this idea of this freedom to feel the feelings, this freedom to look at the pain and to look at the suffering and to be grateful for it. That's true freedom. It doesn't always happen like that every day, all the time. But again, practice, right? Practicing these things. So, think about that. Get in your journal, right? Get in these practicing these comments. Get in these comments and say, hey, such and such is sitting here listening to the Berg podcast and is now commenting about the Berg podcast and is feeling such and such a way about the Berg podcast. In your comments, practice that, and see how that feels. Oh man, I've been on my routine lately. Yeah, man. What are we at here? Day 5 in a row, up and early. Who the fuck's counting? Is fucking someone counting? Who's counting? But yeah, I've been getting up early. I think I'm 5 in a row now. Up early, hitting the gym, or hitting the garage, and it feels really good, man. It feels good because for a little bit there, I was like hit and miss. One day I'd get up early, one day I wouldn't, and one day I'd go to bed on time, and one day I wouldn't. But man, I feel good. That feels really good to get back in the routine. I've been on it, and so I just kind of wanted to let you guys know that too. When you fall off your horse, get back up there. You fall off your skateboard, get back on it. You fall off your routine, get back into it. Right? If you miss the journal, get back in there. Don't beat yourself up too much about it. Just get back in there and go again. So get in your journals and tell a story about the Berg listener. And let me know how that went. Love you guys. Peace. And I'm out.
You know what time it is.
Time to stand up and speak your mind. In this elitist jungle, keep the beats alive. Whether yoga or doja that keeps you high. Gotta stay up, cause on the street you die. Time to wake up and see the light. Stop counting sheep, seize your life. Free your eyes and see suns rise on the horizon, where the street meets the sky.
The master's ignorance feeds our master's greed. Open your mind and read some chapters.